here is fiction, science fiction. We make no guarantees, however, how long it will remain fiction, fiction, fiction.
Rebellion salutations to all you cognonauts out there, and welcome back to another Exofathom, the show that dares to explore the outside reaches of understanding. I am Nick, and I'm joined by my two lovely co-hosts, as always. Mike, how is it going, man?
Oh, man, I'm hanging in there. I just want to apologize for the long delay in between episodes. It's my fault. I've been traveling, lost a bunch of luggage, had a pinched nerve, bunch of things, but I'm very happy to be back.
It's been a hell of a June, that's for sure. And we weren't necessarily complaining about the hiatus ourselves. It was nice to take a little bit of a break. Sometimes you got to do that in order to refresh all the juices, get the mojo back. So glad to be back at it with you guys. And of course, we have Ayla here. How are you, Ayla?
Hello. And let's just blame Mike. It's not like
totally.
Here.
Blame me. Don't worry.
It's not like we could have made an episode while you were gone.
100%.
Hey,
yeah.
Look, I'm always happy to jump on some grenades to take a hit for the team. So, this is all my fault.
Team player here. Team player.
Yep.
Yes,
yeah. And I have to say, every week I could see like the Facebook or YouTube reports where it's like, oh, somebody viewed your channel. And I'm like, oh, failure. Whoever you were checking our page,
disappoint you yet again.
We're so sorry. But yeah, no, it's been real. I have I made it. This is 1 year since my big fall. For those of you who have been listening to the show, still alive. And it's been a roller coaster. Some loved ones recently had surgery. I'm going to need another surgery, and so lots of emotions over here. And it's a Cancer new moon this week, so there's that. And
so that was a scary choice of words.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like whenever you throw in Cancer in any sentence, it's like, what'd you say?
Oh, sorry. No, that went astrological.
Yeah.
No, but I was just talking about surgery, and then I'm like, blah, 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 Cancer, new moon.
Yeah,
you're like, wait, come again?
Like, what are you going through? I'm sorry.
No big C here. Thank you very much. All set with my medical needs. But yeah, no. Minor upcoming surgery. So that will be fun. But how old are we? Gosh, pinched nerves, surgeries.
Yeah, no, I got one foot in the grave and the other foot on a banana peel. So any day now.
Mm-hmm. Life comes at you fast, and so thank you guys so much for sticking around and joining us again. We really much appreciate all of you out there. Sorry that we took a while, but sometimes it's necessary, and I think it's good to have a little bit of a mental vacation. Sometimes this podcast can get a little bit heady for us, even though I consider myself a moron most of the time. Getting into deep topics and stuff can definitely be draining, and so it's nice to take a little bit of a mental vacation. But we're back at it again tonight, and we're going to be talking about Prometheus. We got I think we have probably a few ideas in our head for the next few episodes, so we won't be lacking in that. But I wanted to ease us into tonight's conversation and sort of reinvigorating the podcast with just a kind of a casual story, a casual retelling of the myth of Prometheus, and we can sort of talk about what we extract from it, what we glean from it, whether there's parallels that we know of in modern retellings or even past retellings that we might be familiar with. And really what I wanted to do was circle around this idea of rebellion. And so that was my salutations for this episode, because I think that it's one of the biggest takeaways that the myth of Prometheus can provide us. And of course, we will be showing that to you guys tonight. But my first question to you guys is, are you a rebel?
Rebel.
I'm a rebel, Dottie.
Save the rebellion.
What do you mean by rebel?
Well, yes, exactly. Very good question. Yes, absolutely. Well, I maybe you guys define it. What would you define it as first, and then maybe we can talk about whether you fit inside those parameters.
Well, since Ayla was all like, "Yep, I'm a rebel," I think
I
she
didn't
should
say that.
explain her.
No, I just was
Oh
singing
no,
that
you just said
song.
rebel,
TikTok.
rebel.
Yeah, rebel. There's a song out there where there is that, like, anyway, I won't be able to sing it. I'll spare listeners, but no, I don't know. I think the word rebel changes as you age, right? Because I feel like in high school, maybe, or middle school, the rebel was the kid that didn't ask to go to the bathroom, or the kid that changed their hair color, or the first person to get a tattoo. It's those little tiny, maybe pushbacks from what you're supposed to do. A little unexpectedness, exciting, And then as you get older, I do think that changes, because maybe you don't ask for permission to go to the bathroom, but it's other forms of rebellion. Like, I don't know. I'm trying to think if I am a rebel. I don't really know that. I mean, well, not now. I'm a hermit at the moment for ability reasons. But if I could shake things, well, no, I mean, maybe. Okay,
I'm going to take that as a no. You're not. Yeah. But yeah, no, I appreciate that, Ayla, because I do think.
And
yes.
just for all public record, I mean, yeah, totally not a rebel. Fall in line all the time. No, I'm just kidding.
Anyways, no, I appreciate that you make the distinction about the sort of perspective of rebellion and all of that stuff. But let's get Mike's take, and then I'll see if we can wrap all this up in a nice bow.
Oh shit, man! Why'd you ask that question?
I don't know. You could just rebel and not answer.
There it is.
True.
Be the answer.
I mean, as ego stroking that would be, I feel like our listeners would be losing something. At least
just have dead air for the next 30 seconds.
Also, you just like, yes, I'm a rebel. And
yeah.
I have a natural inclination towards rebellion. And I think of that in I guess in the intellectual sense. I've done some morally gray things that I would have to rebel against some system to do, but in the end, it ended up having positive results. It had one negative result, but I was fine with that one negative result because it impacted me and not the group I was rebelling against. So I guess no, I'm a rebel, and it's usually just taking tools that have a known end, have a known use, and then using those tools for something they're not really meant to be used for, and coming up with a new solution. Yeah,
because rebel's like inventor for you in a little bit.
I think that's the essence of rebelling, is creating something new. Mm-hmm. In the worst case, it's just reinventing the wheel. In the best case, it's inventing something completely new. But if you kind of do rebellion ethically, which I'm talking about here, not like I'm going to go burn down the central control points of power or something like that. I've never thought of it like that. But that's like more active nihilism, I guess. You don't want, because I think of rebelling as like wanting a better system in the end. Nihilism tends to want nothingness at the end. Mm-hmm. When it comes to active nihilists, as I was describing myself. But as a rebel, no, I tend to be naturally rebellious because my mind, I've been blessed to have enough alone time to think of things in a different light, and then that's the spark of rebellion, and then you want to build a better system. So I guess
all that to say, yes.
Yeah, well, and I like the highlighting of the isolationism too, because a lot of rebellion ends up being not going with like the herd mentality or groupthink. It's sort of course correcting through an individualistic type of lens.
Yes, and I mean rebellion in the truest sense, where like your ideas would have you ostracized or killed by the powers that be. Not not rebelling in the sense of um, a harmless counterculture.
Right, right.
Mm.
Yeah, so there is a distinction here. Obviously, we do talk about Mike's bringing up good points, and Ayla brought up a good point. So I want to circle back to Ayla's point, which was one of the ones she first made, which was the pushback against authority. I think that's one of the sort of anchors to what I would define rebellion as. And then Mike brought up a good point here too, which is the results seem to matter in a way that we can ascribe a certain morality to the result. And so what Mike was talking about here is this act of good rebellion, this act to sort of stand in the face of the corrupt structure and say it needs to be revised, or to say that the emperor has no clothes. And I think that there is a big point there, because I think that that sort of delineation is ultimately what the myth of Prometheus is about, is that Prometheus being, in what I would regard to be one of the first acts of rebellion in the Greek pantheon, he knows that he's going to be tortured for eternity. Well, not for eternity, but for a very long time. And so it's the act in face of dire consequences, even to do the right thing, I think. But
Yeah.
like that gets murky too, because then you have the morality of like, whose right thing are we talking about? Some people can justify the right thing as doing terrible things.
Of course.
Yeah.
Like the most dangerous position to be in is to be in the position where you believe in your heart of hearts that you are completely correct or right. Because you do some pretty disgusting things in order to make sure that you're right. But no, I do like the idea that, like, if you are really considering rebelling or being a rebel, you have to take the punishment that you're going to get as pleasure, as best as you can. Because it's not a real rebellion if there's not punishment.
Rebellion without consequences isn't rebellion. Yeah,
exactly,
definitely. Yeah, Ayla, do you have any other thoughts on the concept of rebellion?
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, I like this concept of consequence. And it's funny because, you're like, shut me down, like, you're not a rebel. And I'm like, I don't think I am. I think I was disciplined far too harshly. And there were far too many, like, high stakes consequences for my actions early on that I try to really walk that careful boundary. But then I watched a movie, can't remember what it was, but it was sort of at the heart of what you're talking about, where it's that that memorable rebellion. It's often in the face of extreme personal consequence, and you do it anyway because you feel very passionately about it.
And ideally, it's the quote unquote right thing to do, right?
Ideally, yeah.
If we can make that distinction,
So to kind of, because we're making rebellion this very, we're making it into a spectacle. If you're actually really good at it, you're getting onto levels of basically spying, where you're unseen. And that was brought to mind because of Ayla's, like, well, I guess I'm not a rebel. Because if you do it right, you won't feel like a rebel. You won't be seen as a rebel, but you are actually causing the rebellion.
Yeah, but you're not remembered. So I think that matters. I think that the remembrance of the act of the person who committed the act matters. We don't know who Joan of Arc's, handmaiden was. We know who Joan of Arc is.
But, it is interesting when you think about acts of good. And if you think about the goodness, much of the higher ranking level of goodness is when you do something without the desire to be recognized. So it's almost like you want to be covert, but you have to be caught in the action, and it has to be super detrimental to your personhood. And then you can be remembered. But it's this very, very slim line you must walk.
like I think of all the Bothan spies that died in
Oh,
getting
God.
the
They
plans
got their
to
own
look
movie,
inside.
damn it.
Hey, they got their own Disney movie. All
Yeah, they
right,
did.
that's not the same as getting their own movie.
Too right you are about
Bothan
that.
spies.
But all like that sort of thing, that so like that covert rebellion, you never learn their names, right? You don't know who they are, um, at least within context of the original Star Wars trilogy. You never really learn who they are, right? And I don't, I don't know if praise or not praise, but what's the word I'm looking for? It's like uh, not acquisition, acknowledgement of the rebellious deed doesn't make it like you could do a rebellious thing without getting any acknowledgement. So I don't think acknowledgement is a core part of rebelling. It's nice. It's like an added thing that you're praised by the rebels for doing what you do, but in reality, there's almost not in reality. I'm sorry. In my romantic mind, there is something very beautiful about being rebellious, getting your objective done, and never hearing your name again.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's probably fair enough. What happens, and maybe this is just the passage of time that sort of creates this anomaly, is that we amalgamate all of those unsung heroes into one totem. Um, so like for the Joan of Arc, for example, like she wasn't the only person that was fighting. There were many people that were fighting, many people that were, contributing to the whole. Joan of Arc turns into this almost like a golem or a totem, I guess, to represent that thing. So I think that that's where I was coming from with this concept of acknowledgement, and I do agree that the unsung heroes tend to sort of pass by without any recognition.
Okay. I have a argument here.
Hmm.
And I would argue that within the scope of rebellion, it's worse to be like a Joan of Arc character versus somebody that actually it's worse to get the infamy or fame, right? It's infamy from the whatever you're rebelling against. It's fame to the rebellion. I think that's a very unlucky spot to be in.
Yeah. Yeah.
You are the one that gets the fame for the rebellion.
Yeah, but I think that also is sort of like a crystallized version of what we're talking about with this sort of the essence of rebellion. It's the name that gets put on you afterwards too. Because you could be a rebel and considered an evil person for the rest of history. Or you can be considered a hero. And I think there's a leap of faith there that the quote unquote rebel takes. An acknowledgement that they are kind of vaulting themselves into the annals of history in one way or another, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah, that's fair. No, that's very fair.
So, but yeah, so I wanted to warm up with that question just because, again, I think that Prometheus is one of the first sort of ancient depictions of the act of rebellion. Yes, Ayla.
Before we move on, as you were talking, it made me think, what do you think is like the primary, maybe we already covered this, but I was just thinking about like motivation for a rebel. Would the primary motive, because you think about the motivation, like you have to be very sure that you're right to do whatever you're going to do to be rebellious. And, because being rebellious for rebelliousness's sake isn't necessarily rebellion.
It depends on the age, right? Like you're getting at the rebel without a cause sort of argument. But it depends. I think the younger you are, the less cause you need to be a rebel. I think the older you are, the more you feel like you have to be sound because you have a better idea of the game that society plays on you with respect to like work and all of like your public figure in a sense.
Yeah, like in movies, if there's an older person self-sacrificing, for some reason it holds more weight because they know exactly what they're sacrificing. I guess they're older, but still, like, if it's a younger person, it's often foolhardy and the motivations like self-righteousness or zealotry or something like that. But I do think motivation is really interesting because, like with the Joan of Arc example, was God motivating her? Was she like, you think
According
about
to
those
her,
kinds of things.
yeah.
I know. And like, even then it's like, how did she know and not think, oh, I should check myself in somewhere, like I'm hearing voices, like
That
if
was
it were
that was
me one
considered a
day.
gift back
I
then.
know, but I mean, like, if it
Yeah.
were me and I woke up and someone was talking to me, I'd be like, I should probably get this checked out. Like, I don't know if I had
It
to
was
have been
also,
raised
they didn't
differently
have
to, like,
doctors and psychiatrists.
oh yeah, I guess they did. I guess I'm getting really
Yeah,
granular.
if you were
with
like a
this.
modern time, like a modern,
Yeah. Well, like she could take
Joan of Arc.
Zoloft and just, like.
Could you
So,
imagine though? And God's like, I'm trying to talk to you. Quit taking medicine.
yeah.
A modern
Trying to reach you,
retelling of
but you
Joan of
won't
Arc is
listen.
great. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Stop meditating. Gosh.
Was there anything else that you wanted to say, Ayla,
That was
before we
it.
move into the actual myth?
No,
I
I just
do
wanted to
have-
highlight that.
I do have one question, since
Mhm.
I'll be the guy that blocks you from moving forward with your life.
Okay.
What's rebellion to you?
Rebellion to me, I think it's ultimately the standing in the face of authority at great cost. I think you guys kind of summed it up perfectly together, and I would agree with both of you. There is something that is, it has to have stakes. It has to have stakes. Like you said, rebel without a cause. That's very, that's the
Dean.
yeah, James Dean, the teenage angst, like I want to
Trying to
be,
look
I
hot.
want to rage against the world, but I don't really have a reason to because I've only lived on Earth for like 17 years, yeah, absolutely. But that does speak to something deeper within humans, right? There is this fire that's lit or that flickers inside of us that kind of wants to push against the rules. And so I think that that's interesting because to me that would that's been throughout all of our mythology, our histories, this human urge to fight against a set of rules. And sometimes we do it for the right and sometimes we do it for the wrong. And so, yeah, I think that when you get older, you find a little bit more direction for that energy, and maybe you find a little bit less need for it because you start to understand more. You have a little bit more knowledge. But yeah, I would say, standing up in the face of an authority system or figure at great cost to yourself.
All right, listen here, Boomer. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, I'm inclined to agree. Jeez, what's going on outside?
My goodness.
Rebellion.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
right? Blame on the horn.
Mhm.
They didn't have a heart attack. Jesus.
I used to be that person. Oh, you're getting that 3-second honk.
That's
Aw.
like they like if it was somebody just laid on their horn. All right, that's what happened.
Mhm.
Hey, I respect it. That means they were really upset. I gotta listen.
Do you think rebellion is a single agent action, or is it a multi-agent action, or does the single age action ends up building into a multi-age action sort of thing?
Yeah, I think that you're probably yes and yes. Much like all of the things that we talk about, there seems to be sort of like a Ouroboros factor to it that is a little bit circular. So yeah, I do think that single actors can spark collective efforts, and also collective efforts can spark standouts, people that want to make a name for themselves within that collective. So I think both can be true and false at the same time, almost.
Interesting. Yeah, no, rebellion is a from like a phenomenologist point of view. It's rather interesting.
Yeah.
How this thing, because like, yeah, you're right. Like one actor can kick off a whole collective, or a collective can make one person rebel even more, or start the rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no,
Certainly. Yeah, and it's just an energy that sort of feeds off of itself. But yeah, let's get into the myth. It's not going to be very intensive or heavy. I just wanted to start casually talking about Prometheus. Are you familiar with Prometheus? I know Ayla isn't, but I'm pretty sure Mike is because he's read Greek mythology and stuff. So.
And I did watch the movie, which was one of the installments in the Aliens franchise. So, I mean, I'm not completely without familiarity.
Loosely based. Loosely based on the Greek god.
I'm sure I've heard it before. Is it the fire one? It's the fire, right?
Did you graduate from the school of running away from things?
Oh yeah,
that has to be probably one of the worst film sequences. Don't get me
started. It's so true.
I'm not going to get it.
Oh, you didn't like Prometheus?
The guy that runs away from that falling tower, but
girl.
He runs straight. Oh, it's a girl.
Is it a guy or a girl?
Right.
I think
she runs a robot.
She runs like you can take 20 steps to the right, 40 steps to the left, and you're clear.
Every single disaster movie, because I love disaster movies like earthquakes, tidal waves, comets, there is always that person who just needs to take 20 steps to the left, but no, they keep running in the same direction, looking behind them, like knowing which way the building's gonna fall. It's just silly.
And see, every time they live, I get mad because it's like in Darwin's world, they die.
Yes, they do.
You run straight because you're dumb.
Right.
And you're gonna die because of natural selection. But no, you live because you
you're
have
in a movie.
Protagonist armor.
Right. Plot armor. Yeah.
Yeah, the plot armor. And it's just
plot armor.
Can you stop? Could you not do that? Or just make the character a little smarter?
No.
Oh man, that was me and Rickon in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, same sort of idea.
Just had to zag. That was it.
Right.
But no, getting back to your question, Nick. I'm sorry.
No problem.
The myth of Prometheus is one of my favorites. I discovered it when I was studying nihilism because of the notion of the punishment that we'll get into later on.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I found, and I found it rather intriguing in that this Titan Prometheus loved humans so much that he was willing to sacrifice what he did. It was something that was like if you create anything, you can look at it. You can look at it as like if you created something, being willing to sacrifice everything for that creation.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you had one little part in the creation. I've read it.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed Prometheus.
For sure. And I know Ayla is quite unfamiliar, but you'll learn all of the things that there are to learn.
I want to say that a couple more times.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you said it yourself. So.
No, I know. I'm all sensitive. Sorry.
No. I think that what's kind of cool within reading all of this stuff again, and I have here my the first book I ever read, adult book I ever read as a kid is a copy of Edith Hamilton's mythology. I still have this copy.
Impressive.
It's falling apart, but it's the one thing I had since I was a kid. So, but yeah, I've been reading through the book, and it's really interesting because you will see motifs of Jesus. You'll see motifs of Satan or Lucifer. You see these motifs that come across very strongly, and the way that they all tie together and they all kind of play off of each other is really interesting. So without any more further ado, what really starts this story off is something called the Titanomachy, the Titanomachy, which is ultimately the battle between the Olympians and the Titans. So the Titans were these creatures that were created from Kronos and Rhea, that were sort of monstrous. They were children of monstrosity, if you want to say. But it's kind of like the idea of the Nephilim or like the proto-humans before humans. But they were imbued with a lot of power, and they reigned supreme under Kronos and sort of were his soldiers, if you will, kind of like Satan and his legion almost. Then you have the birth of Zeus, which is born from Kronos. We talked about this in the episode with Zeus. and he is the one that rebels against his father. And in that rebellion, the Titans take up arms with Kronos, and they fight the Olympians, which are Zeus and his siblings that he freed from his mother or his father's stomach. Because if you remember, Kronos devoured his healthy children, and only left the Titans to run havoc on Earth. So this whole giant battle called the Titanomachy or whatever, it lasted 10 years, and the Olympians finally won after 10 years. And Prometheus was a Titan originally, and his mother was Themis. I think that's correct. Themis, who symbolizes Mother Earth, basically. Prometheus, being the god of forethought, saw the eventual ending of this battle and decided that he was going to side with Zeus, because he could see that the Titans were going to ultimately fail. And so he was sort of spared from the punishment that the Titans suffered. And most of the Titans were sent to Tartarus, which is an analog for hell, if you want to think of it that way. It's basically a cavernous depth deep within the earth that souls are eternally punished. Basically hell. The idea of hell, not the underworld that Hades runs, but like an actual place where people are punished.
Didn't we do an episode on this where like Hades was like the person trying to figure out if you're going to go to hell or heaven?
Yeah, I think that was in the Hades episode that we did. I think you did that one, right?
Probably. I don't know. I'm too old.
Yeah.
I don't remember that far back anymore. But yeah, sure. I was the one who did Hades.
we did do an episode. Right. Yeah, we definitely did an episode on Hades, and he was a part of sort of balancing that out. And I think you had like the Elysian fields in
Hades,
that's
heaven.
And then that was heaven. Yeah.
You can think of Hades as like a DMV waiting room to figure out where you're going to go.
Pretty much. And he didn't have any sort of like he wasn't evil, but Tartarus is specifically different than the underworld.
It's hell. It's
right.
The Greek mythology's version of hell.
Yes. So it was strictly for the punishment of souls. So most of the Titans get thrown in there by Zeus and his lightning bolts. They get cast into Tartarus, and they're encased in the earth. And the prophecy says that eventually they will break free from the earth, and they'll have to fight the gods all over again. That sort of cyclical storytelling that happens. But Prometheus, because he decided to side with Zeus, was able to be spared. And also, I should note that Atlas, you guys know the image of Atlas holding up the world. He was also a Titan, but he was the chief commander of the Titans. And so Zeus's special punishment for him was for him to forever bear the weight of the heavens on his shoulders. And that's where you get the imagery of Atlas from.
And then his daughters commit suicide.
The Pleiades, yes.
Yep. And Zeus feels so bad for them that he casts them up into the sky. Mm-hmm. That's where you get Subaru, the 6, 7 sisters, all of that.
Definitely. And so again, Prometheus gets spared, and this whole sort of skirmish on Earth between the Titans and the gods is finished. And so Prometheus was able to also have his brother spared, which is one of my favorite characters in Greek mythology. His name is Epimetheus, and he is the god of afterthought. Because Prometheus, being the god of foreknowledge or forethought, his brother was a bumbling idiot that would make snap decisions and then change his mind. that's what
hey.
He was cheating, basically.
A lovable idiot.
Very lovable. Right? Yes,
absolutely. A lovable idiot is so much better than just an idiot.
That's right. Yeah, bless his soul. He wasn't doing it. He wasn't trying to be bad, but he literally was the embodiment of afterthought. So, of course, every decision he makes is going to be a bad decision. And then he only realizes the right decision after the consequences have happened, which is unlike his brother Prometheus, who knows the consequences of basically all of eternity ahead of time. And so this distinction with Prometheus is important because we talk about the knowledge of consequence. And so what Prometheus does throughout this myth is with full knowledge of the consequences that he's going to bear for doing the things that he did. And I think that that's why I think the act of rebellion does need a little bit of the knowledge of the consequence, or maybe not the knowledge of all the consequence, but the acceptance of consequence.
Yeah, I think it needs to be like a intuition of consequence.
Right. You kind of know where this could be heading if you continue the course, right?
Yeah, or you know you know what's going to happen. It doesn't have to always be so tragic. It could be as simple as like, this person isn't going to like me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be you understanding the consequences of the actions.
Right. Which really points to something I think about self-actualization and self-knowledge and how you operate within the world, that knowledge of self. And that kind of gets a little bit closer to the Christian tradition of the knowledge of good and evil, where Lucifer brings the knowledge of good and evil to the Garden of Eden. We see that Prometheus is the bearer of a torch, which is a light bearer, which is what Lucifer is called, so we get a lot of these themes over time through many mythologies.
Yeah, there's a very deep wisdom in there about, I guess, not getting too close to the light, even if you're the one that bears the light.
Right.
The damaging property of knowledge.
Yes. Flying too close to the sun, like Icarus, of course. But yeah, so after this giant battle, the Titans are dispensed of. Prometheus and his brother Epimetheus are spared. And then they are charged to create humankind, basically to populate the earth. Zeus says, okay, now that this battle is over, we need to usher in the golden age, where life is on earth. There, we need to create animals. We need to do all of this stuff. So you think of like the Genesis myth, like when God decides that Earth needs to be populated. It can't just be a planet with monsters on it. We need to get rid of the monsters. We need to get, better things here.
Just like imagine the work order on that, right? We're like, all right, we're done with this Dark War shit.
Yeah.
We're going to go into a golden age.
Yes.
Immediately.
That is a very harsh transition.
So production-wise, we got to get this going. I don't care what you're doing.
Yep.
I know you had to go through a bunch of stuff for war, but now we need a golden age. So start working.
Right. And the Greeks have a kind of an interesting myth about this too, which is loosely tied to Prometheus, but I'll just throw it in right here. They talk about the 5 ages. The first being the golden age, where all of the humans that were created were like gods. They were lived long lives. They were pure. They didn't need to eat. They didn't need to drink. They were, basically a step down from gods. Then you had the Silver Age, which was the Silver Age was basically the entire Silver Age people destroyed themselves because they were too stupid. So whatever gods that were creating Earth, whether it was Prometheus or not, they were like, okay, we made them too much like gods. Now we need to dial down their intelligence, but they dialed it down way too much. And the Silver Age race, or the Silver race, killed themselves because they ended up being too stupid.
Hey, if you want to make some omelets.
Yeah, you got to break some eggs. Yeah, for sure. And then you had the Bronze Age, which were the warriors. This is where you get a lot of the warrior gods that you'll hear of. Sometimes they'll associate people like Hercules or Achilles with the Bronze Age, or representational of the Bronze Age, where it's like the Bronze Age come back, because by the time Hercules and Achilles were around, the Bronze Age was already over, according to the Greeks. And they lived in the Iron Age, which was the current era that we're living in now. And they say that a new age will come, which will be the 5th age, which basically will start the whole process over again, and usher in the golden age again. But during this time, Zeus instructs Prometheus that he needs to populate the earth. His brother Epimetheus is helping him. His brother Epimetheus is a dumbass. A well-intentioned dumbass, but a dumbass. He was he hastily created all of the beasts on Earth, and without the forethought, forgot to give any of the good qualities to humans. So he gave flight to the birds. He gave breathing underwater to the fish. He gave, fur to the mammals, all of these things that would help them specialize and survive. But by the time they were on to the humans, they didn't have anything. Prometheus gave all the good qualities away to the animals, and Prometheus was left with the creation of humans. So Prometheus decides to do two things. He does two things that are very important. He creates humans as upright. He creates humans as upright because they're fashioned like the gods. And that sets them apart from animals. It also gives them a little bit of an edge when it comes to survival and all of that kind of stuff. Then Prometheus decides that they need a little bit more. And meanwhile, Zeus has been telling him, I want you to create these humans, but they can't have fire. Can't have fire. Just can't have it. We don't want to give them fire because we just, to Zeus's, pardon me, in Zeus's perspective, as soon as they get fire, they're going to be back in the same situation where they have to be wiped from the earth and something new has to be born. So he wants to keep fire from humans. Of course, Prometheus, realizing that the only thing that he can give is fire, flies to Olympus or the sun, depends on the myth you want to talk about, and steals the fire. And he steals it within a leek reed. So he puts it inside of a leek and then flies it down from Olympus or the sun. And this is sort of where the punishment begins because, and there's another little story that I'll tell on the side of this after I get your guys' comments. But the biggest sin was the stealing of fire and giving it to man, because with the giving of fire, you gave the opportunity for knowledge and technology and all of those things. And Prometheus knows this. He knows that by the simple act of just giving humans fire, they will eventually, because he's the god of forethought, be able to create great civilizations and great knowledge and all of that kind of stuff. So you guys have anything you want to interject before I keep going? Or
before you said fire, I thought the second thing was going to be thumbs, because like if he uprighted the humans and gave us like bipedalism, that was huge. The next thing categorically would be thumbs, but I guess fire works too.
Because fires
it just bothers me because they're not like in similar categories, and I'm just like, I don't know, it seems like a messy mythology, but
what's the difference for you between fires and thumbs?
Well, because uprighting humans, that's like a kinesiology sort of type of gift, and fire's like a elemental kind of gift. If he gave them like fire and something related to the air, that would make sense, or bipedalism and thumbs, that would make sense. But it's just odd that of all
I think the assumption is that in creating humans in the image of the gods, they had thumbs, and so you wouldn't have to assume that they're going to need thumbs.
But wouldn't they have been uprighted already then?
Well, no, they wouldn't have. They weren't made yet. So it got when Zeus says make humans, the concept of human doesn't exist yet. Like Prometheus is the one that creates it. So he creates an animal that is upright like the gods.
Interesting.
Yeah. And basically in the god's image. So you would assume that the gods have thumbs too.
Yeah. No, and then is there any more information on the difference between the fire sourced from the sun and the fire sourced from Olympus? Olympus?
Not necessarily, because they thought that the sun and Olympus were very interconnected. I mean, some of the like in Edith Hamilton, she says both, because the way it's interpreted, you could either say that he takes it from the sun, which is sort of symbolic of Zeus as the sky god, or he takes it from Olympus, which is the home of the gods anyway. So it's like you're taking it from the seed of God.
And there was like some sun worship back there too. Like,
always. Yeah. There's always been sun worship for sure.
Okay. And the leek reed. Yeah. So, I mean, we're talking about like green onion kind of.
It was a fennel stalk. Sorry. It was a fennel stalk, but it looks like a leek. Yeah.
Fennel stock. I'm just looking this up real quick.
Mm-hmm. But that's where you get the ceremony of the torch, right? In the Olympics, the running of the torch and the lighting of the thing.
It would look like a leek reed. Well, and because like the plant itself, the fennel stalks, it's a torch-looking thing with like fluffies coming off of it, which that looks like fire.
Well, I
It's
mean,
green,
the lighting of the torch is literally a ritual that reenacts Prometheus taking fire from the gods and giving it to humans. So
and
it's a direct representation.
Yeah.
Continue, Ayla. Go for it.
Oh, I guess my last question was just that Prometheus was the god of forethought.
Mm-hmm.
But so he gave all the animals like different gifts, and he didn't have the forethought to realize.
His brother Epimetheus, afterthought. That's why I'm saying he has a brother that's an idiot.
So his brother did all the animals, and then Prometheus was like, "Oh, you missed.
You forgot the humans, and you forgot to give the humans any good qualities."
Yeah. Oh man, that's so interesting.
And Epimetheus like, I'm just making things.
yeah, I didn't realize. Yeah, pretty much.
That must be why God got rid of the dinosaurs or Zeus or whatever, right? Because he's just like, well, you give the humans fires, so we need to get rid of these lizard things.
Yeah, we have to adjust the balance somehow.
Mm-hmm.
No, I really do like the idea of stilling the fire, because it's not. You don't like. For example, if I went to the sun, I don't still all the sun's fire, right?
Mm-hmm.
I still one little flame.
Right.
And then I return home. And then we build off of that one little flame. So when you represent knowledge like that, you can always recreate the fire if you understand where the flame comes from. Does that make any sense? Am I making any sense?
Yeah, it becomes almost like an eternal source.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the most important thing. It's not so much that that you gain all the abilities of the sun, but it's that you gain the ability to raise a sun.
To recreate.
Yes, yeah. And that's what's most important for using the flame, using the stolen flame to start a new fire, in your engine or in any, or in like the way that the idea of Promethean flames are used as a source of technology, passion, arts, things like that. Yeah, so that's the one thing I really do enjoy. Is that Prometheus he loves humans, he loves his creation so much that he stills one little flame of the fire for the humans and gets subjected to punishment.
Yep, that divine spark, right?
But thing feeds the divine spark to the humans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. And that pisses a lot of people off, that's for sure.
Yeah, heaven forbid you give a bunch of other people power. Jesus.
Exactly.
For them to do the things that they want to do. Oh, well, God, that's the worst.
There's another little story of insult to injury that will paint the picture for why Zeus has it out for Prometheus so bad. One of the other stories of Prometheus is that he found a loophole in sacrifice. Basically, he, being the father of humanity, went as an emissary to Zeus and talked to him about sacrifice. And they were having a conversation about which parts of the animal should be given to the gods. And so Prometheus, with all of his guile and intellect, decides to wrap bones and fat in around a very thin piece of like plump looking meat, and then another bag that has all of the the good meat in it. And he gives Zeus the option: you can choose this one or you can choose this one, and the humans will give it to you as offering forever. And Zeus, being a dumbass, sees the very prettily wrapped bones and fat and decides to choose that. And that's pisses Zeus off, because once he opens it and he realizes that it wasn't the good stuff of the animal, that created the trend. And this is actually an interesting part of mythology that really translates to humanity and anthropology. People stopped giving the good parts of an animal to the gods and started giving fat and bone, the stuff that wasn't utile to them. And so you see this big, shift between the gods getting all of the good stuff, and then this decision for humans to be like, I'm just going to give them the bones and the fat, and maybe, wrap it up in a little skin and make it look good. And that, that is seen as an affront to Zeus, because Prometheus tricked him. So that adds a little bit to the dynamic of why Zeus and Prometheus are at odds with each other.
I was going to say Zeus obviously never played White Elephant. You never pick the prettiestly wrapped gift. You always go for the ugly gift. That's the best one in hiding, obviously. And this idea of wrapping, the Trojan horse, it's interesting how much Greek mythology pays attention to dressings of things. I think that's really interesting.
And that sort of guile is it to me is a direct manifestation of the spirit of Prometheus, which is to defy the gods. So this idea that you're not going to give gods the good cuts of meat anymore, and you're just going to make it look pretty but give them the scraps. There's a really weird mental shift that I think is important there, and I think it has to do with what Prometheus represents, which is knowledge. Once humans gain more knowledge, they realize that they can trick the gods. They can kind of pull a fast one on them and give them the shitty pieces while they keep the good pieces for themselves. And so that is another little act of rebellion that I see that happens, that sort of represents that spirit of Prometheus. Yeah. Good.
Yeah, no. All of that makes sense. I was making sure my mic wasn't muted. Yeah, no, all of that follows where rebellion is now I feel like you're starting to get the point where you're saying that the building blocks of rebellion is just knowledge. If you have more knowledge than your superior, then you can stage a rebellion.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got to think about, the rebellions that we see through history, right? It's because somebody had a piece of knowledge that they wanted to propagate over the current consensus, a piece of information, or even just rhetoric sometimes. Sometimes, knowledge doesn't have to be actually, true information. Sometimes it can just be the ability to speak rhetorically and sort of lull your audience to sleep. Kind of like I'm doing now. Sorry, guys.
Well, now you're getting to weird points about truth, and I don't want to get into at least right now. I don't want to get into rhetoric and truth and all of that.
Right.
But
of course.
I think on the average, you sit pretty. You're sitting pretty right about this whole rebellion idea.
And it is the idea, right? It's that idea. It's that idea of, hey, I can trick the gods.
Yeah. It's based off of having one special piece of knowledge.
Right. And that's that part that represents it. So of course we were talking about rebellion and we were talking about consequences. So we gotta dive into the punishment here. The punishment. And it's actually kind of cool. I think it's Aeschylus in 440 BCE wrote this play called Prometheus Bound, which is where we get most of the mythology for this comes from Aeschylus. And it's one of the oldest stories about Prometheus that we get too. Basically, in his wrath, Zeus decides to punish the Metheus brothers. Both Epimetheus and Prometheus are decidedly punished in different ways. So Epimetheus is punished with Pandora. And Pandora, I think we've talked about this a little bit, so I'll just gloss over it. But Pandora was given to Epimetheus as a bride by Zeus, but she came with caveats and a box. And that box came all the sorrows and woes that were unleashed upon the world because Epimetheus, being the god of afterthought, allowed Pandora to open the box without thinking, which unleashed all of the chaos into the world. But Prometheus is who we're talking about here. He was given a much more, what word is it? What word is it? Like, not archaic, but it was much more biblical.
Torturous?
Very torturous. Yes. I think it's definitely much more torturous. So Zeus decides to punish Prometheus by taking him to the Caucasus Mountains, one of the highest points in the Caucasus Mountains, where he has Hephaestus, who is the metalsmith of the Olympians, create adamant chains, basically unbreakable metal chains. And then he's bound to the peak of a mountain, and told that and then Zeus creates an eagle that will eternally peck his liver out. And since he is a Titan, he will regenerate, and the eagle will come back to peck his liver out again. And this will happen ad infinitum. Basically, that's his fate.
Welcome to being an alcoholic.
Yeah. I mean, it is very much like the monkey on your back or chasing the dragon, or there's a lot of, sort of psychological mechanisms that represents, the eagle pecking out the liver for eternity.
Yeah, I do like the story of that punishment. Just like the notion of chaining up a god to a mountain and then having an eagle show up every day.
Yeah. Oh, you grew another liver for me. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, and just bounce out of there, But there's also like some deeper thing I feel like with so we have Prometheus, we have forethought, and I don't know if have you ever made a decision where you're like, 6 out of 10 times this is going to end up bad, but 4 out of 10 times this is going to go great. So you try it and you get the 6 out of 10 times where everything goes bad. And then you have to think about it every day past that future, supposing it's something significant to you. Right. But that sort of thing is like the eagle returning to pick at the liver.
Yes.
You're I think metaphorically, like what it's sort of representing of an illustration of regret.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and quite a literal representation of punishments through sort of rebelling against the gods. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Is Zeus said, "Don't give humans fire." Prometheus like, "Well, I'm going to do it anyways. I know what you're going to do to me, and I've already seen it, and I don't care. I'm still going to do it." And it's
a G.
Yeah. It gives no F's, that's for sure.
He loves humans so much that he's willing to. He doesn't give a shit.
Nope, doesn't give a shit. And so
maybe because he sees that in another millennia or so, he names the eagle, and the eagle shows up, and he's like, "Hey, Prometheus," and he's like, "Hey, eagle," and he's like, "How's it going?"
They clock in like Tom and Jerry.
Oh, do you think that conversation's like, "Look, I'm real"? And the eagle's like, "I'm sorry, I have to pick out your liver." He's like, "Yeah, don't worry, you've been doing this for 200 years."
Yeah. It's like, "I'm desensitized. I just, drink all morning. Come get it."
Yes. And so I think that this is where you would say that the hero is sort of descended. And this is sort of the underworld part of the hero's journey. It's like where the hero is at its lowest, and he's resigned to this fate of basically being stuck there for eternity. And it's only by a matter of very chance events that Prometheus is eventually freed. And with that, I bring you the story of Io. Io, and this is another one of those great Zeus stories. Io being a lovely maiden that was a princess. I forget exactly what country she was from, but it was in Greece. I don't know what city, but she was a princess that Zeus fell in love with. And Zeus, being the creeper that he is, he would send her dreams at night, calling her to come to him, saying, Io, sweet Io, why are you a maiden? How you've been a maiden for too long. Come to me, come to me. And Io told her father that these dreams are coming to her and that Zeus is telling her to come to him. And Io's father, being afraid of Zeus and afraid of the repercussions of denying Zeus, tells Io to set out and go seek Zeus out. So he expels her from the kingdom, and she has to go out and meet with Zeus. Eventually, Zeus meets with Io, and of course, he's trying to do his very rapey thing of having sex with her, because that's what Zeus does. And of course, the old ball and chain don't like that very much. You know who I'm talking about. Hera, the old nag herself. She catches on to what Zeus is doing and being
Toxic.
being
Toxic
a
relationship.
They are very toxic, both of them.
They're gods, huh?
Yeah. Hera, being the ever vigilant wife that she is, catches on to what Zeus is doing. And she descends from Olympus down to Earth. Zeus, in a panic, envelops the Earth in darkness to hide from Hera. he literally brings the sky down to the Earth and envelops it in darkness, and is like trying to hide from Hera. Of course, Hera.
Nick, take note.
Hera finds him immediately, right? And so she starts to clear the darkness, and she sees Zeus standing there. What is he standing next to? A white cow.
Not suspicious at all.
A white cow. And Hera's like, where'd this cow come from, man? And he's like, I don't know. I've never seen it in my entire life. And I don't know. This cow just popped up out of nowhere. I don't know what it is. Hera doesn't take a minute of that bullshit. She's like, oh, okay. So if it's you've never seen this cow before, I would like you to give it to me as a gift. Zeus, knowing that if he doesn't give Hera the cow as a gift, the whole jig is up, and he's going to hear, an earful back in Olympus. So he gives the cow to Hera. Of course, the cow is Io, that was transformed into a cow in order to hide from Hera. Hera, knowing this, decides to set gadflies upon Io, and gadflies that will never die, that chase her across the world for eternity. And so Io, as a white... Huh?
You need to calm down with this eternity shit. Seriously, like, that's a long time. Do they not know?
It's a long time. Io is now a white cow, roaming the world, being stung by gadflies over and over and over again, crying out in her torment because Zeus basically abandons her, and Hera tortures her, really. And it was Hera's torture that set the motion, the events in motion to eventually end up with Prometheus being freed. And so Io is crossing the world. She reaches the Caucasus Mountains. She stumbles upon a body chained to the Caucasus Mountains, the highest points of the mountains, being pecked at by an eagle. And she says, "Who is this?" Prometheus says to her, "You are looking at Prometheus, the giver of fire to humankind." They have this whole talk with each other where they're like, "Yeah, Zeus did this to me. Oh, he did that to you too. Yeah, he's a dick, man. This guy sucks." Like, and Prometheus is like, "Yeah, he chained me up to this rock. I've got my liver pecked out for eternity. He's made you a cow, and she's, like you're basically roaming the earth forever." But because Prometheus has the forethought and the knowledge of the future, he was able to comfort Io in a very small amount, saying that eventually her travels will be over and that eventually she'll regain her personhood. This takes a long time. So Io leaves Prometheus and travels the earth, basically, settles on the Nile, basically in Africa. So she goes all the way to Asia and then comes back to the mouth of the Nile in Africa, and that's where Zeus finally turns her back into a human. But then she populates and she has a family and she grows up, and she has descendants, and the descendant of Io is a gentleman by the name of Hercules. And Hercules is the one that's charged by Zeus because Zeus finds out that Prometheus has a piece of information that he's hiding. And it's about prophecy and all that stuff. So Zeus is mad that Prometheus is kind of being mum's the word about it, and finally agrees that through Hercules, sends Hercules to free Prometheus. And Prometheus is, chains are broken by Hercules, and that is, he's finally freed. But that would have never happened without Hera's ire and without her besetting upon Io, because it was Io that gave birth to the lineage of Hercules.
What's the other pronunciation for Hercules?
Heracles.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so that's basically the story of Prometheus, guys. Any thoughts, Ayla?
Yeah, well, I was laughing when you were talking about Hera. It's getting mad and doing what she did to Io, and it made me think of when I watched Babe for the first time, and they have that scene where I guess the cat gets put out of the house. And then when the cat finally gets back into the house, they're like, oh, and hell hath no fury like a cat scorned. And it's just funny, like these sorts of, characters or circumstances or relationships, like they kind of just persist for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was kind of funny. And then I also thought it was funny about Io and Prometheus chit-chatting, because you think of Zeus as sort of like that patriarch kind of father figure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And here you've got like these sort of like offshoot demigod sibling things comparing notes. And like, remember when you first connected with your sibling and you compared notes about your parents and you put things together and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
wait a minute, what? So I kind of like that moment in the story too.
Yeah, they lament with each other. And so, I mean, Io is just a woman. She's not a god or anything, but she gets turned into a cow. Both
like
of them,
an everlasting cow.
Right.
Sort of.
Yes, she would have been roaming for eternity if she didn't get changed back into a woman. But yeah, I do like that. And there's a whole little conversation that they have with each other about how much Zeus sucks. And and it's funny because like that is kind of the consensus in Greek mythology. Zeus is kind of a dick, and like they like him in the fact that they revere him and respect him, but they know that he is a sort of a terrible god and not incredibly smart sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And here's a question. I don't mean to be insulting to anybody listening or anything, but would you say that Prometheus and the mythology of him kind of parallels like the Jesus story, right? Because he
Yes.
suffers for humans'
Mhm.
betterment, basically.
He's Jesus and Lucifer in one
Right?
deity. Yes.
Right. And
He's
we were
the knowledge bringer and also the self-sacrifice, the ultimate sacrifice for humanity.
And I was thinking about that because I know Mike didn't want to get into heuristics too much, but and not to do that, but like Nick and I were talking about knowledge a couple days ago, and some of the mythology that's really heavy on like what is symbolized, like how is knowledge symbolized? Is it good? Is it bad? Do we need it? Do we not need it? Is the pursuit of it contrary to our goal? Like it was just a really good conversation. And I do think that the concept of knowledge, even knowledge being flawed and knowledge being like true, it's just interesting, that this is something that's in our little human minds because we have minds to think about it. So it's like a weird, like snake eating the tail kind of thing, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the earliest sort of precursors to Prometheus is the Babylonian god or Sumerian god Enki. Enki is kind of cast as the same sort of person. And they really share a mythology in the flood myth. So what happens is, I forget who it is, but there's some descendants of Prometheus and Epimetheus end up being the people that are saved from the deluge in Greek mythology, and it's the same thing with Enki. Enki ends up saving a couple of his descendants from the deluge as well. So there's a lot of deep roots. This Promethean archetype is that's why I wanted to open up the conversation about rebellion, because I do think that he is an archetype of rebelling, much like Enki is, much like Lucifer is. In Milton, Paradise Lost, the whole mythology is that Lucifer rebels against God and he's cast into earth, into Tartarus, basically. And he has a legion of angels that fall with him, which could be seen as the Titans, if you want. God being Zeus and his angels being the Olympians. There's a lot of really close parallels there. And of course, it goes even back further to the Sumerians, which have almost an identical mythology.
So what would you rather be, Zeus or Prometheus?
That's a really good question. I think it's more human to be Prometheus, but I think that there is a caveat there that I'm wary of. I'm wary of the Promethean archetype, and only that it's the archetype of the adversary. And I don't think that that's a negative thing all of the time, but I can see where it can be destructive as well. So I don't know if that I would want to be either. I mean, Zeus was an awful person, so and he was doing some really terrible things. So probably Prometheus, because he didn't do things like, turning Io into a cow, and taking the innocence of many earthly women.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as I guess the question becomes like, would you rather be the status quo or the thing that becomes the status quo?
Right. The rebellion or sort of the king. You want to be the king, or do you want to be the rebel? Do you want to be Thor? Do you want to be Loki? It's the brothers. It's the mythology of the brothers, right? You have the good brother and the evil brother. And so you can see Zeus and Prometheus almost as those brothers struggling against each other.
Like the dangerous thing is not to like plead sympathy for the devil, but as you create the comparison between Lucifer and Prometheus, there's just a very thin rhetorical bridge we have to walk, because the connotations between you say Lucifer, they might have very strong connotations. Prometheus may not have any. So then the audience listening attributes the connotations from Lucifer onto Prometheus. But yeah, they're similar, but they're not exactly the same.
No, yeah, they're different storytellings, and if I was going to sort of correlate them to those two, I would do it with the caveat that I'm speaking of the Gnostic Lucifer and not necessarily Satan of the Bible, because those I think are distinctly different characters as well. So I would say it's more like the Gnostic Lucifer, the one who rebels against God. But it doesn't necessarily have to mean that he's like evil incarnate. You know what I mean? Like that's a more of like the moralistic Satan instead of the Gnostic Lucifer.
Yeah, what's interesting is I've kind of been bouncing around the new Obi-Wan series, and it seems like they're playing Anakin. They're playing Darth Vader is very much like not like Lucifer, but the devil. Like pure incarnated, not even like the Lightbringer type of the devil,
right?
Or Lucifer. So it would be like that Promethean archetype would be interesting to see within pop culture, because it does add something different. It does add a little contrast between Lucifer, between like Christian proto fucking archetypical characters that you see in pop culture.
Well, and I think it's a reminder too that that even good structures can be overly rigid, and they can become overly rigid over time, so that there is a sort of rebellious energy that is important to humankind to keep those structures from becoming oppressive.
Yes.
And so I think that that's important to know too, that it sort of represents, like you're saying, it's not the moralistic Satan. It's a more of like a defiance, a righteous defiance, maybe.
Well, and I
That's
think.
Go for it.
Oh, well, you were asking about like current, more modern day depictions, and I'm sure there's like definitely more modern. But when you said that, it reminded me of Frankenstein, and I remember when I was studying that, they were talking about how proximal it was to the Prometheus story, and how, this idea of bringing light, he was trying to give life to this monster, and as punishment, the monster like kills his family and everyone he loves. And so it's interesting, you think about the
He even
role of
uses
Prometheus.
electricity and Zeus's thunderbolts to
Oh yeah,
invigorate the monster.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like a weird sound that just came. Oh yeah, sorry. But I'm tired. But no. But it's just kind of interesting because again, same like you're talking about this Lucifer concept. Like I don't know much about like the scary version of it, but I am interested in the knowledge tree, the idea of learning and knowledge, and even the brothers. Like forethought and afterthought are both thoughts. Like their source is around this idea of humans' ability to think and to learn, and maybe kind of create where there's nothingness. When I say that, I just am so in awe that Einstein thought of black holes 100 years before we actually had a picture of one. Like he, in a lot of ways, he's a little bit Promethean because he extrapolated through deductive logic and reasoning information that was then later proven true. Was he punished? No, but they're alluding to this thing that we've kind of always known about ourselves, is that we have an ability to put one thing and another thing that are seemingly unrelated and determine like some sort of causality or predictability that we can stand on to learn other things. And I think that's inherently human. It's very unique to us. And well, I don't know, if you look at crows, they kind of do the same thing. But, before we knew more about the animal kingdom, I do think we thought like, yeah, our brains were really of interest to ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Reflects like a symbol of intelligence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some sort of higher understanding, whatever that means.
Yeah.
What the sensory provides.
Yeah, and you hear these old adages of ignorance is bliss kind of thing, which is to suggest that knowledge is the opposite of bliss, which it can be in a lot of circumstances.
Well, yeah, knowledge. I mean, if you take Prometheus, right? Knowledge is suffering. He had to suffer for his knowledge, and he knew of his suffering, and still it's that, right? It's the knowledge of the suffering and then voluntarily putting yourself in that position anyways, because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing that we're striving for as humans. That's the thing that speaks to us deeply. It's that thing that we like. That's why I love these myths, because they crystallize these deep human mechanisms and ideas and urges and impulses, and they give you an anchor point to look at and say, oh wow, I can look at this now from all different angles and kind of understand myself and humanity better.
Welcome to intelligence.
Oh yeah.
It's honestly like it's one of my favorite stories to state how dangerous it is to be intelligent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely it is. And especially if you're intelligent in a system that isn't as intelligent as you are, you become the ultimate adversary in that respect too. Again, tying this sort of adversarial idea with knowledge, you can only be an adversary if you have knowledge of what you're opposing, and knowledge of something that could counter it too, I think, so yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. And I share your love of the mythology. I mean, I actually grew up with Edith Hamilton's mythology book as well, but unlike you, I didn't read it all that much. And so it is fun to kind of get a little bit deeper into the mythology, but also to discuss it, because I think when I read some of them, it falls a little flat. And then when you start engaging with the story a bit more, when you start engaging with the parables and similar types of themes across cultures, it does start to paint, like you said, a really beautiful picture of not just your own psyche, but humanity and what we have been struggling with for eons, decades, centuries, millennia. I don't know. It's debatable how long we've been there. You were just telling me that crazy skeleton story.
Oh yeah.
Have you ever seen Prometheus and Bob?
Yes, I was just thinking of that on Kazam. That was one of my favorites.
Kablam?
Kablam. Yes.
Kablam.
Right.
Kazam was an internet thing.
That's
Kablam was a Nickelodeon TV show.
Right.
Kazoo
Was something else different. Kazoo was the thing from the Flintstones.
Hello, Dum Dum.
Yeah.
From the Flintstones, yeah.
The alien from the Flintstones. Okay.
Dumb.
But Prometheus and Bob, Prometheus was a alien that was trying to teach Bob, the human, new things about science and technology. And so the skit would always go astray, like Prometheus is trying to teach Bob how to light a fire, and Bob lights Prometheus on fire by the end.
And his ship, and it always ends up with Bob like screwing everything up.
Yeah, very much like.
But there was always a monkey that got it right.
Yeah.
It'd be like Prometheus teaching Bob how to use a snorkel. And Bob can't get it, and he's drowning. And then you see the little monkey using the snorkel in the water.
Wait, what was this show called again?
It was called Kablam, and it was on Nickelodeon. It was a claymation cartoon show. It was kind of like Robot Chicken for kids, basically. There was different little mini vignettes that were on, but Prometheus and Bob was one of the vignettes.
Yeah, it was,
that's funny.
It was stop motion SNL for children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I tell you, growing up in the early 90s, there was such a difference between the kids on the field that had cable and the kids that didn't have cable, because you just lack that common knowledge, and you're just like, damn, I know nothing about these shows. But
that's why you get the free offers, baby.
So you just tap and catch up.
We would get cable for
cables.
We would get cable for 2 months every year, because they would give you that free subscription to cable or whatever.
You mean that little torch of cable?
Yeah, my dad was not about it. I was we never got cable. I was the rabbit ears. So on Sunday at the football game claiming clear, when I held it like this, guess what I was doing for 3 hours?
Getting a workout.
Yep.
Holding it just like that, and who's winning? Well, the Rams. Oh, okay.
Well, and it's funny, just talking about Greek mythology and thinking about some of the residual effects of sort of Aristotelian logic, and right, Aristotle was all about the senses, right, what you can see and touch, and scientific method. Was that him? And I was just thinking, we had our telescope episode, was the last one, and I don't know if I brought this up, and it was one of those things that I thought of afterwards, but July 18 is going to be the big...
No.
Okay, don't let what. Just 1 minute.
No.
Because I want to go there. Okay, so July 18 is going to be the big release of the NASA's pictures from the Thomas Webb Telescope. I'm very excited about this. My co-hosts are kind of rolling their eyes, whatever. But I mention it because Nick made a really interesting point, and I had to share it with our audience, and this is relevant to the knowledge.
Do you have my consent to share my inner workings of my mind with the audience like this?
No, because it was a random thing.
I don't know. I don't even know what you're talking about.
So okay. So we were talking about the visible spectrums of light that our human eyeballs can see. It's very narrow. And that the Thomas Webb telescope, it's really focused on like spectrums of light outside of what we can see. I forget what it is. It's like magnet. No, it's
Yeah.
infrared, I think.
Okay, we don't want to have a conversation about telescopes.
We don't want to go into it. But what I want to
Yeah.
say is that I think it's really interesting that we are able to use our sense-based, human-based knowledge to create tools that can observe things that we can't see with our eyeball, but we can extrapolate the data so that our brains can still understand that stuff. And that's all. Again, you know, we're thinking about Prometheus and this idea of knowledge and bringing stuff back. And I just think, well, I don't know. I guess I did just work that in for no reason, didn't
Yeah,
I?
you
I don't
did.
know. You guys aren't
Totally.
picking it up. I thought it
No.
was cool. I thought it
No.
was, you know,
No.
snippety snappity, but
No.
okay. All right. Well, I'm a
Snippety
dork.
snappity. All right, I'm ending this.
Like, it's hip, it's cool.
Snappity?
Snippety snappity. I'm getting the crappity. All right.
Snoop, snoop, snoop. The
Snoop,
the
snoop,
seeing
shoop, shoop,
beyond, seeing like the fires beyond the visible.
There's
you
a
know-
thing called common courtesy. I just have to say.
Anyways, all right. Well, we should wrap this up, anyways. Yeah. Thanks, guys. That was fun. Hope that you enjoyed this episode. We are back finally in the groove, and I think this was a decent, chill conversation to get us back there. So thank you guys so much for listening. We really appreciate all of you out there. Thanks to Mike and to Ayla, as always, for being great co-hosts. And we look forward to the next episode that we share with you guys. Please give us a thumbs up on Facebook and on YouTube. It would really help us out. We're trying to get to that 35 subscribers. I think we lost a sub or two. That's okay. It was probably bots. But we just appreciate all you out there. So give us a thumbs up and let us know what you think. If you got a comment for us, just leave it down there in the comments section as well. Thank you so much, you guys. We really appreciate all of you out there. Until next time, Cognauts, stay out there and we'll catch you on the next Exofathom. Good night.
Peace.
Later, man.
Later, man.
I know.